How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Podcast Season 7, Episode 9. My name is Timothy. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there, kids.
And as a special treat today, we have Josh Hrach in... I love saying that name, by the way. We have Josh Hrach in Phoenix, Arizona.
Greetings, live long and prosper.
Yes, so we asked Josh to come and sit in the hot seat because Jaime's occupied this week, and Josh has been telling me for years now, I guess, that he's a big Star Trek aficionado. So I guess, can we ask, like, what's your... Mine is the original series. That's how I started. I watched it when I was a little kid and all through the 70s. And Jonathan is the Next Generation, I think, right?
Yep. That'd probably be the beginning. Yeah.
Where do you land in your Star Trek? What's the center of your Star Trek universe, Josh?
So it began with 2-year-old me watching new episodes of The Next Generation, and that being my show. I don't remember kids shows as a kid. Sesame Street, what's that? It was all Star Trek.
Nice.
And so TNG would be probably what I grew up on, but I matured, and I think the serial storytelling of DS9 has peaked out for me when it comes to the Prime shows.
Cool. Yeah, Jaime's the DS9 too, right, John?
Yeah, I think that's probably where his strongest is. But yeah, he's also a Voyager buff, and I think all of us are well-rounded. I think it's just where we sort of came in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so for me, like, I mean, I remember watching The Next Generation when it premiered, and I watched it for like maybe two or three seasons, and then I kind of fell off. And it wasn't until I met Jonathan and his mother that I kind of went back to DS9 and watched it on VHS, because Jonathan had a huge collection of VHSs. And just so you know, Josh, Jonathan is my stepson, so even though he's really old.
Really old. Thank you for that. That's great.
Yeah, welcome to being really old.
But the Star Trek lineage is strong.
That's right.
Yes, it is. It is. And all the sort of comic and anime and all that kind of stuff too.
Nice.
All right. So more so than mine, for sure. Okay. So I got a couple of fact checks from last episode. We were talking about the furthest away device or whatever from Earth. I forgot to look up what that was, but I also follow Astro Alexandra on Instagram, and I noticed that Jonathan does too.
I do.
And she does these sort of nerdy astrology things. And one of the things she talked about was Barnard's Star, which has the closest exoplanet to Earth, which is 6 light years away. And the point I was making last time was it was hundreds of thousands of years for us to travel at our current speed. And according to this post here that I've got on Instagram, she says it would take 9,000 years to get to Barnard's Star.
Oh, much more reasonable. Much more reasonable.
Yeah, much more reasonable to what we can do today. And then the other person, I keep forgetting his name is Jason Pargin. He's an author listed on he's one of the New York bestsellers. He's the one, Jonathan, that said Tom Cruise is too old and we should probably stop him from running and jumping and hanging off of planes and stuff.
Or we dare him to do more extreme stunts.
Right. That would work too.
You know, he's at this age. I was looking this up when I saw this. Like, how did this Mission Impossible film series start? It started with it being handed off from Jim Phelps, played by Jon Voight in the 1996 film. And I looked it up. Jon Voight was 58 in that movie. So, like, Tom Cruise is at, like, prime age to, pass this off. James Bond never does that. Job, yeah. James Bond never does that. It's just like, oh, there's now a new face and everything is still the same, I guess. But this is in a weird spot where, yeah, maybe Tom Cruise could pass it off to another generation. I'm not saying he should. Because otherwise he will be in another 12 movies. But it would be interesting.
Well, while you were busy, before you were born, actually, I was watching Mission Impossible on TV with people like Martin. Oh, what's his name? Martin. Oh man, from Space 1999. Help me out. Martin Lando, and Leonard Nimoy for a while too. I think I probably went to it because of Star Trek, because Leonard Nimoy had joined the show.
Yeah, wasn't it Peter Graves too? Peter Graves.
Yeah, he played Mr. Phelps. Yeah, and then there was there was a couple of gentlemen too. There was a big, heavy, sort of muscle-bound guy, and there was another guy who was a really good sort of tech guy, but I've forgotten the two characters' names. Have been so long, but they're sort of been replaced by Rick Rames, how do you say his name?
Ving Rames.
Ving Rames, yeah, thank you. Yep. And you know, whoever, like whether it's Simon Pegg or the guy who got run over by the snowmobile, I can't remember his name again.
Jeremy Renner. We had the same discussion last week. But it's great that you know him by that. Not like, hey, what was Hawkeye? What was the guy who was nominated for an Oscar?
The guy that got run over by the snow machine,
the guy who was nominated for an Oscar for, no, he's the guy who got run over by a...
Yeah, and the movie with the bomb exploding stuff, yeah.
Yeah, Hurt Locker, yeah.
Hurt Locker, yeah.
It's amazing how quickly your legacy can change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you know, what have you done for me lately? Got run up. Well, he survived. He's now back making movies. So
that's right.
More power to him.
And for the record, we're happy he's okay.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. Oh, definitely. All right. So, and then the other sort of story. This is a long tail follow up here. We've talked about Apple TV Plus and you know where they are in terms of. Just to fill you in, Josh, we did a. Probably about 3 months ago, we always talk about which of the streaming services are doing the best. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a toss between Disney and Netflix, of course, right? Mm-hmm. And Apple TV is kind of climbing up, but it looks like they're going to start licensing the movies that they've been making, which are awesome. I mean, the shows on Apple are just amazing. But they're in order, I guess, to reduce some of the losses. Apple has losses? What? You know?
Well,
but according to this article, yeah.
I mean, they're sticking their wonderful content onto Apple TV Plus, which sure it's available on other TVs and other platforms, but it's still like relatively limited. So I'm not surprised that there's losses.
Well, that's true, and yeah, I mean, what they're the fifth place out of the 5 streaming. I think we talked about that, Jonathan.
Yep,
somewhere like that. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I mean, but like you know. You see shows leave Netflix and show up on Paramount, or leave Paramount and show up on Disney, and like stuff like that, right? So I'm not surprised, or Prime. I guess Prime and Netflix kind of trade stuff back and forth, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was watching something on the other day or saw a notice about something leaving Netflix, and then a week later it showed up on Prime. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I can watch it eventually, right?
Yeah.
As long as you're not doing the Lopez calculus and moving from platform to platform on a monthly or annual basis.
Yeah, the Lopez calculus, for those of you driving at home, is you use the service until it no longer suits your needs, and then you cancel, and then you come back later when they have a better show on, right?
Or go ad-free, or rather with ads. I'm sorry, with ads.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jaime's the smart one among us. He doesn't just blindly sign up for these things. He picks and chooses.
Yeah, we recently just did that as well. We took a few of the services and went for that Disney bundle with ads. And it's like, yeah, this is actually saving us money. And who cares about the occasional ad that comes up?
Yeah, 100%. So, by the way, I messed up here. We should be in the headlines on the Apple TV story, and I skipped over Jonathan's story. But, John, why don't you hit us up what you got?
Yeah, I wanted to start us off with some Trek stuff this week in the headlines, because there was this really interesting video that dropped on YouTube that caught my eye, and it certainly caught the eye of a lot of Trek fans. So this is a new short that has been put out, and it's not officially Star Trek, but it's pretty darn Star Trek. It's a, 4 minutes, 6 minutes. It's a 6-minute short that is basically sort of a coda to the Shatner-Nimoy era of Star Trek. And it's been done by the Roddenberry Foundation as part of this project that is a little weird. It's kind of like they're trying to create this time capsule of Star Trek memories and sort of the importance of this sort of legacy of Gene Roddenberry and the original creators. But they're also doing this working with a company that is really into AI. So it's a little bit weird. It's basically a time capsule in that it's got these different iterations of the William Shatner Kirk character, and Shatner was involved in this, so he actually did work on this, and it basically kind of plays like it is. I mean, it's there's no actual dialogue. It's all just sort of done in eye glances and mimicry, and it basically looks like it is Kirk at the end of his life meeting up with Spock at the end of his life as they sort of reflect on their journey together. And kind of as they're doing this, they're sort of passing by familiar faces and familiar places, and yeah.
So there's a couple of things. One is, as I was watching it, first of all, the shot where they show him on the side, I mean, whoever did the body acting just doesn't have William Shatner in mind at all, because it didn't look like they lost me at that point. But we've talked about this. We talked about this project years ago, or last year, because this is also an app on the Vision Pro called the Archive. I don't know if Josh has got it on his Vision Pro, but
oh yes,
and it's got a whole bunch of clips of Roddenberry and ships, and you can. That's something where you can do like the immersive scene, and you're standing on the bridge of various enterprises as they go through the movies and stuff like that. So you can actually see what the set looks like, and they've re-rendered these things. But these particular clips, and I forgot, Keen in our team, or sorry, our friends of the show Slack commented on the number here. I got to get it up here. It's 7685874. I don't know what that means, but these clips that he's got on YouTube here came from the Archive. That's where I first saw them too. And I went back and checked and sent you guys a screenshot earlier today to show that, yes, in fact, they are there. And I've forgotten her name now. The characters, the other woman from The Cage, we had Majel Barrett as the sort of temptress to Christopher Pike to tempt him, and they brought the two women from the bridge down. Anyway, the one story is her kind of looking into space or whatever. And then there was an episode with Nimoy, and then this one here with Kirk reminiscing. But it's funny, in the middle there where you see Kirk in the Generations outfit, and then you see him in the original series outfit in the middle, and then you again see him sort of at one of the when he was Admiral, I guess, uniform, and it reminded me of 2001, where Dave is at the end of his life. Like when he ends up on whatever planet, Tralfamador, or wherever they go at the end of 2001, Space Odyssey. And he kind of just like, 1 minute he's the astronaut, the next minute he's eating dinner, and then he's lying in bed dying, kind of thing, right? So that's kind of what that reminded me of, that weirdness. So, and it was weird, like you're right. They did a pretty good job better than Rogue One in terms of like making the actors look younger, right? Or except for that one pose where the guy was standing on his side, just not that. Have you seen this at all, Josh?
Oh yeah, no, I saw this when it came out, and so going back to that 765-874, I believe that was the star date that was established for that first video, so when I saw this, I was trying to think back to that, because it opens with Gary Mitchell with the foil eyes, and but then she's looking at the information of Kirk's body at Daystrom, which we saw a glimpse at in Picard season 3.
Yeah, and that's Yeoman Colt, by the way. That's
right.
That's supposed to be Laurel Goodwin as Yeoman Colt.
So it's interesting. I wonder if was this really Kirk, because in a previous video they showed the Enterprise D-saucer on Viridian 3. Is this then? Because we know Kirk died there, Kirk was buried there in the movie. So is this a clone Kirk that we were watching? And the only reason I say that is it looks like it was a Kirk brought just for the purpose of going to see Spock die, because we know Spock dies in the Kelvin universe. Thanks, J.J. Abrams, for that. And then we saw that I'll say cameo by Lieutenant Commander Yor, I think it is. Where was he from? He was from the Kelvin universe and was the only one to cross dimensions and travel through time. So he's the one bridging this connection, which I thought that was an interesting tie-in, showing him in the video. And there were plenty of moments in that whole scene up to that point where one or two words could be said. Like Kirk's lips are begging to be open to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, but I just wanted him to say Saavik.
Yeah. But that's where things go wrong. That was actually her. That was actually the actress who played Saavik.
Because I looked at it, I thought, why does Amanda have pointy ears? Okay, I get it now. Okay.
And I've seen a lot of people I went onto Reddit to have a look to sort of see how people are reacting. A lot of people are saying that the Vulcan behind her is the son that she had with Spock.
Ooh. So I thought maybe it was Stawn. I don't know.
Yeah, it was. The Robin Curtis came back and played Saavik. So that's actually the same actress who played Saavik in the originals, which is really interesting too, because famously Robin Curtis didn't come back for Star Trek VI because it was supposed to be Saavik that was turning against the ideals, and she wouldn't come back. She didn't think that was good for the Saavik character, and she wouldn't reprise that role.
And I agree.
And that's why they cast Kim Cattrall as a different Vulcan character, because they couldn't convince Robin Curtis to come back and have Saavik take that dark turn.
But Saavik was originally Kirstie
Alley, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then she wouldn't come back for Star Trek 3 because she started to really break out after Star Trek 2, so.
Yeah, this whole thing about Saavik having Spock's child, along with this episode, there was also another video interview with Robin Curtis that came out, and she talked about that a little bit as well. About how the original Star Trek 3 story kind of had or rather, Star Trek 4, when they're leaving Vulcan and the Klingon ship, there was originally some dialogue of mentioning that, she has Spock's son. Should she tell him or not? Is he in the right mindset to know or not?
Doesn't that kind of betray the whole mentor-mentee thing too?
I mean, Ponfar hits hard. I don't know what to tell you.
Any port in the storm, I guess?
Any port in the Ponfar?
That's true. I think I'm thinking of Kim Cattrall and Spock being mentor-mentee too.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to have that with I mean, it's a strange thing too, because Vulcans are such a long-lived species. It's kind of weird to be like, well, he was already an old man, but but he lived to be like 200 plus. So if you happen to be in your 80s, 90s, whatever, and meet somebody who's in their 50s, 60s, I guess it's still okay.
I guess unification has many meanings, right?
Yeah.
Well, don't forget too, he was going through Ponfar on the Genesis planet, so right, he didn't look like an 80-year-old man.
No, true.
So yeah, he was doing Ponfar. So you think she probably helped him through that? Is what you're getting at?
Well, they may have actually gotten it on there then.
Right, exactly.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
The implication.
She does say to him. Yeah, she does say, "I'll help you with this." Yeah.
So the implication is that it happened there. Yeah.
And they. In one of the scenes from, I can't remember if it's I rewatched all of the older ones and then this one today. There is a scene where it looks like it's the top of Mount Seleia, right? Where Spock is brought back to himself after it's the scene from the end of 3, and that's actually a really cool rendition of Mount Seleia too. So yeah, it's weird. It's a very weird thing, the whole sort of CG AI of-ness of it all. And I'm not sure I understand completely the purpose of all this. It's not engaging enough for me to be like, oh, what a great taste. I want more. It's not enough to make me be like, hey, I want, or hey, this is a perfect sort of send-off ending. I think everyone was a little sad that there was no final scene between Spock and Kirk.
Right.
But I don't know if this really matters now. It just feels like it's kind of, oh, and by the way, we forgot to do this 30 years ago when Generations came out. And yes, it's been 30 years, Tim, since you and I went to go see that in the theater twice back to back. 30 years.
Star Trek 5, right, hinted that, because Kirk even said, I've always known I will die alone. So he was not going to die with Spock or Bones.
Yeah, but we get the memo comes in that, oh, by the way, Ambassador Spock has died, but we don't know that scene, right?
Exactly.
And I guess they're trying to fill in that blank here, right?
Yeah. So it sounds like it's for Spock's benefit, so he can die at peace.
Yeah, but kind of weird too, though, because if you fit it into where what is it? The Next Generation, where Data and Picard and Spock go to reunificate.
On Romulus,
right?
Yeah.
On Romulus, yeah. But Romulus and our AI is going to come back to us in a few minutes later on in the show. But where am I going with this? Yeah, but like that's so far in the future. Like, is it because Kirk was in the Nexus that he survived longer than Spock? Maybe.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so that's why he would have been around. Because I was going to say, because I thought that Kirk had died before Spock had died.
Yeah, he did, because Generations happened. Then we had the other Trek TNG movies. And then it's after Nemesis, which is when the whole Romulan supernova incident, which that's a tangent in itself, occurred, which would be when Spock got lost and went to the other universe. So technically, Spock knew of Kirk's death. He should have known, at least.
Right. Okay. So this scene here, where in this little Star Trek short, whatever we're calling this thing, short Trek, I guess we'll call it, right?
Quiet Trek.
Yeah, I mean, Kirk is visiting Spock in Spock's deathbed, or maybe, I don't know.
So again, I'm not sure. Like, it almost, a part of it feels like when the scene where Kirk is sort of walking through a gallery of people that he knew seems like it is maybe a vision at the end of his life, but then he goes through and he has another scene where he ends up sitting next to Spock, and it seems like it's the end of Spock's life. Yeah, it's a little confusing, and especially because it's not aided at all by dialogue. And beautiful score, by the way, by Michael Giacchino. It's a lovely piece. It makes very little sense.
Well, like I said, they got the central section of the video, directed by Stanley Kubrick, which makes no sense, right?
Yeah. So again, it's interesting what they're able to do, but I'm not sure what the goal of this was, and I can't say I understand. Or I've seen people online who are like, "I wept," and I'm like, I did not weep when I saw this.
Are you not entertained?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm heartless. It didn't make me weep. I don't know. Yeah,
it did seem like a vehicle for a lot of really good CGI and AI and all that stuff. But
yeah. And as impressive as it was to look at, I am much more interested in that technology being used to further what they've already done, especially, Tim, as you've experienced with the Apple Vision Pro, those immersive experiences on the bridges of the Enterprise. Give me more of that, right? I don't want to just be seeing a static view of the bridge of the Enterprise. I want to be able to have a 360 view from the captain's chair and be able to work on my Mac from the captain's chair. Like, that is my ideal. Make it happen, somebody.
But you remember QuickTime VR? I don't know if you remember that. It was like a 3D format where you could. It was sort of like Google Maps. They had these, like, they would set up these cameras and do these 360 shots. Well, before they destroyed the Enterprise D, is it that from Generations?
Yep.
Or before they destroyed that set where they let what's her name fly?
Deanna Troi.
Deanna Troi, thank you. Before they handed her the wheel, don't let the psychologist fly the ship. Is the moral here. But before they did that scene, they actually went through and did all these QuickTime VRs, and I have the CD-ROM. Remember those things back in the day of all those QuickTime VRs, and they could take those, even though they're probably too low res for Vision Pro, but they could take those and give us a 360 walk around of the Enterprise, right?
Well,
or the bridge anyway.
Well, if you've gone through the Archive app, you've probably noticed.
I have, yeah.
You've noticed there are bridges there that you can see that never. Well, maybe they had sets, but
they were in the movies, yeah.
Yeah, but there also are sets for other ones, like the Phase 2 Enterprise, or you have sets of what's the ship I'm thinking of? It was the Kelsey Grammer ship in Cause and Effect, the Bozeman.
Excelsior? No. Oh, okay.
Right, like you had a ship that was on screen one time. Mm-hmm. I doubt they took proper photographs and did something to do that. So these are all being recreated in CGI anyway. So take the time, like, keep going with that. Like,
I want to know when people are walking towards the lift, the turbo lift, and they turn left just as they get in. That's where apparently the crew bathroom is. Yeah. I want to see that. The
one bathroom. Yeah, they all have to share.
Bathroom. Well, the captain has his own bathroom too.
Well, if you drink that much Earl Grey tea, you're going to need one.
Yeah. Well, sometimes he needs a number one. So
there you go. There you go. Yeah, anyway, it's a neat project. I am curious as to where it's going. They seem to release these every few months. Obviously, it's all available on YouTube. It's on our Slack channel if anybody wants to check it out there and give us your thoughts. But it's a strange project, and I'm not sure that it is ultimately satisfying for me. My only thought of this was, Tim, I think you and I both read the William Shatner stories, the novels that he wrote coming out of After Generations, because he didn't want Kirk to die that way. So he wrote a whole pile of books afterwards that were basically like Kirk's adventures in the timeline of Next Generation, where he's brought back to life by like Borg nano bots.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It was a little convoluted, but I'm like, so why not just do like a what if version of Star Trek? Do like the alternate realities where like, hey, what if instead of being dead there, the Borg arrived and we're like, we can make him our new guy and like
didn't J.J. Abrams already do this? Like,
I mean, but you can do this now and do it well enough in like, you could do it as a cartoon series, you could do it as a CGI series, you could do all kinds of different ways to do this stuff. You don't need, due respect, I don't need to see Bill Shatner playing Kirk anymore,
Or even Spock. I mean, it was weird seeing Spock with the many haircuts he had too, right? Which didn't make sense either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you just need someone to narrate The Watcher. I'm sorry, to narrate Q. Oh, wait, there we go. John Delancey can come back.
There you go. We've been looking for a reason to get him back anyways. All right, well, let's move on from from Star Trek to Star Wars. We got good news this week that Star Wars Visions is getting a season 3 on Disney Plus. That's pretty great news. Always really interesting to see what the takes are going to be when you see a season of Star Wars Visions. Obviously, this is the anime series, the shorts that started back in 2021. They take all these amazing studios and they sort of take their takes on this. They started with anime in season 1. Last season, they went in a different direction and got studios from around the world. So there was Japan and India, the UK, Ireland, Spain, South Africa, Korea. There were some really, really cool results in there. So they haven't really said what their plan is. Hopefully they'll do something like that again.
Well, they have on the poster the studios that are going to do it. They've got David Production. They've got Kamikaze Doju. They've got Polygon Pictures, Production IG, Q something and Trigger something, Wit Studio.
Yep. So we'll see. Yep. We'll see what they come up with. But I really dug the series. What do you guys think of it?
Well, it was pretty cool. It was interesting to sort of see different takes on this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need to still take the time to go through the entire thing. I'm saving it because I've hit this little backlog of I need to go through Rebels and Clone Wars. And so it's like, I'm trying to think, where do I start? What do I binge?
Yeah. Well, Jonathan will have the answer for you.
I am a very loud and proud Rebels fan, but I was a Clone Wars fan as well. I am a Clone Wars fan as well, but Rebels is my jam. That is just an amazing series, but it makes much more satisfying experience if you watch Clone Wars and then watch that, because there are so many characters that carry over. There's so many through lines. There's so many cameos and things like that. It's a lot though. Now, like you've got, all the seasons of Clone Wars. There is some really good resources online that can tell you sort of which episodes you have to watch and which ones you can watch. There are some really good standalone stories, and there are some really good sort of, focuses on specific characters and stuff that really don't matter in the grand scheme of the story. But I will say, when they brought it back on Disney Plus, the Clone Wars, and finished up the story, that is some of the best storytelling ever done in Star Wars.
That's what I've heard.
Amazing. The last arc basically takes place sequentially, like concurrently with the events of Revenge of the Sith, and sort of focus on some of the other characters and what's happening around the galaxy while the events are happening on the moon of Endor.
Nice.
And it's amazing. And then some of the stories in Rebels, I mean, they measure equally with that. There are some scenes and some sequences in that are just amazing. So I know it's a tough ask of anybody. Hey, could you watch 11 seasons of animated television?
Yeah.
Just squeeze that in. But it is really, really great stuff.
So I did that during the lockdown. I had an exercise bike here and a treadmill, and I think before the Vision Pro came along, now I use the exercise bike with the Vision Pro, but it's all on Disney Plus. So I did go through all of Clone Wars and Rebels in the last I think I finished like maybe a year ago, I guess, but just before Ahsoka came out, I finished. So,
and then even from that, like you can jump from Clone Wars also spins into Bad Batch, and then some of Bad Batch bleeds into Rebels. Like there is a more cohesive, like Josh, I don't know how many episodes of this podcast you might have listened to, but we get a little frustrated with the seeming lack of planning around the Star Wars movies the last little while. It just seems like they kind of lurch from thing to thing, whereas the television stuff really seems to have a cohesive through line. And frankly, it's just because Dave Filoni worked on all of it. So he kind of loves this character, and he's like, oh, I want to finish that story, or I want to revisit that character. And it kind of has a great through line, as opposed to some of the later movies that are a little all over the place.
Yeah, it's a shame no movie was made after The Last Jedi.
It truly is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Josh, you and I are going to get along fine. Just fine.
Interesting. Okay.
Last thing. So the Scott Pilgrim animated series that was on Netflix, apparently one and done. They announced this week that they're not going to come back for a second season, which I'm a little disappointed by. It was weird. And I get why it's not everybody's cup of tea. They were hoping to sort of capitalize on the popularity of the Edgar Wright film. So they brought back the entire cast to do the voices. But obviously it's much more anime, and they kind of divert from the storyline from the movie, which people love. So I can see why it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I thought it was...
Isn't it based on the comic books, though?
It's not. It's actually really not. It was really kind of its own exploration of the Scott Pilgrim verse in a really interesting way. It's a really neat way to tell the story. Brian Lee O'Malley, who is the creator, was very much involved in this project. It's done very much
Toronto, isn't he not? From Toronto?
He is a Toronto guy, and he was very much involved in this, and he very much wanted to try and not to just do the same thing over and over again. He wanted to do something different, and he is obviously modeled after his drawing style. And I thought it was really interesting, but I can understand why this is sort of the end, but I am disappointed because I love the characters, I love the voice performers, I love the actors who were in that movie, I love the movie. I'm one of the 6 people that went and saw it in the theater when it first came out. And yeah, I mean, if they want to give me more Scott Pilgrim stuff, I will happily take it.
Yep. Yeah, no, I've owned a copy of it and watched it 100 times, and of course, huge Edgar Wright fan as it is. Anyway,
yep,
cool. All right, well, that brings us to the main part of the show where we talk about something more Star Trek related. This time, we're talking about Star Trek Lower Decks season 5. It's so sad; it's almost over. Season 5, episode 6 in this case, and we're talking about Of Gods and Angels.
No, Of Gods and Angles.
Angles. Okay, yeah. Right, yes.
Do you know how many right angles there are in a starship?
Too many. There are lots. But I guess if you're a cube or an orb...
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So, typical, again, I always have to start off with the tropes, and this was the sort of, can't you see what's wrong with him trope that they had in all, where you have the Frank Gorshin character and the other character with the black and white faces, and can't you see he's black on the left side and I'm black on the right side.
Those sneetches have stars upon thars.
Yeah, exactly. So in this case here, it's those guys are orbs and we're cubes, and and of course, I don't know. Jonathan usually figures out the plot points like early on, but yeah, as soon as I found out that the 2 young kids were missing, I knew where that was going. Right?
That was a Romeo and Juliet moment immediately.
Yeah, I think I missed that the second kid was missing. I just remember the cube and then was just thinking, okay, I thought maybe the cube was just, out trying to get away and was tired of it all, but I totally missed that there was an orb missing as well. If I'd caught that, then
they didn't say it earlier. I think they didn't say that there was
boardrooms at the end.
Yeah, it wasn't until the end, so you didn't really miss anything, Josh. I think it was basically that this happened, but because Trek has done this story previously, as soon as they said, "Oh, we brought our, the young child of the leader is here," and I was, as soon as they went missing, I was like, "Oh, it's that Star Trek trope. I get it. Okay, it's the Romeo and Juliet Star Trek trope.
Hiding in the Jeffrey tubes, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. No, it was it was definitely one of those moments where you're like, "Oh, Trek. Yes. Okay. Cool." But that's what this show does so well, right? They take these moments that we love about Trek, these tropes that have appeared over the last 50 plus years, and they kind of subvert them and turn them. The fact that they turned it into something really gross towards the end is excellent. So that's what they do.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah, and then the other character too with the demigod ensign.
Yes,
ensign. Yeah, Ollie the demigod ensign. She was the granddaughter of Zeus, who is the big green hand we talked about again last week, right?
That's right. That episode keeps coming back around, and it makes you kind of wonder, doesn't it? Doesn't it make you wonder that we saw that?
Well, I mean, they added the green hand and holding on to the Borg cube.
They sure did, and if you'll recall, they also they referenced that again because you were talking about that episode, right? The it's called Apollo.
Who mourns for Adonis?
That's right. Yeah.
Is that the one with the kiss too? The first kiss?
I think you might be right. The first interracial kiss, yeah.
The Kirk and
Uhura, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an elevator pitch for this one, which is the little what we thought of this one was sometimes a good idea can hit you just like a lightning bolt to Boimler's butt.
Did you come up with an elevator pitch, Josh?
So, do you remember how much you loved playing with blocks as a kid? Do you remember how much fun Geometry Wars was on your iPhone? Well, guess what? We have an episode for you.
Yeah.
I was thinking this would be great on Vision Pro with all the cubes and spheres, because that's what most of the apps on Vision Pro look like these days. The only one I came up with was we all deserve a chance to change the sheets.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Come on, it's a metaphor.
Or no, actually, no. That wasn't. This is the other one. Rajek when he fell into the chasm.
There you go.
Okay, I just got to say, like, he is one of my favorite characters on the show, and I would love to just have more. Oh my goodness, Tamarian language on the show, please. Yeah. There's not enough Tamarian language.
It's funny, though. I saw some great memes, delving into the Trek social media verse. There are some great memes out there about the fact that we speak in those same metaphors so often on social media now. The dog sitting next to the fire, this is fine meme. Like, there's so many of these moments where, like, we understand. You don't need to explain something. You could just say the summary of something, and like we were turning into Temerian slowly but surely.
But what's the one line about the when the walls fell? That's the
Shaka when the walls fell. Yeah,
Shaka when the walls fell. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I found an unusual amount of familiarity with Tendi and Rutherford this episode when it came to the alternate universe pad and how they were identifying it by their bezels. Like, as an iOS developer, I'm thinking of this as, I know what iPhone that was. I don't know what color it was, but if like you got like the little bezel there.
The home button. Yeah.
Or exactly. Like the camera placement, it's smaller. Oh, that's obviously the iPhone 11 Pro. Like, come on.
Yeah. Or the last headphone jack. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That could be a sign you have a problem, Josh. Just saying.
Oh, I do have a problem, but it's not for this episode.
But we're called the iOS developers for a reason.
That's right. For my pew for this one, this scene where they go outside and it looks like they're going to form into like some giant creature and start battling each other, and they just form the orb but bigger and then the cube but bigger, made me laugh so hard. It was like this stupid outcome of a fight between orbs and cubes to have them form mega cube and mega orb as opposed to anything constructive.
Well, I missed the quote, but did you get it where he says,
I did. I have the quote.
Orb ovulate or whatever?
Yes. It's the one from Ransom that I really liked. He's like, they're combining into giant shapes, Captain. They could be turning into anything. Oh my God, you know what? It's just a bigger orbit, a bigger cube. They're not creative at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, just
nice.
Again, I love that they love Trek so much and just delight in taking the piss out of it. It's just so funny.
Yeah.
That checks.
Yep. That's what I love about this show, and I would love another 5 seasons of it. It's so good.
It breaks my heart. Every episode this season, we've all said the same thing. Oh my God, I can't believe it's going to end. It's so great. I mean, it's going to go out on top, which sometimes it's great to have a show do that and leaves you wanting more. And because it's animated and because it's a voice cast, they could come back to it later on. They could do more. They could do Lower Decks, The Next Generation. Like, you could do anything with this. They proved it works. I mean,
in terms of lamenting, Mike, what's the name of the showrunner? Mike McMahon. He posted on socials that it was weird to not be producing an episode of Lower Decks this week for the first time in 5 years. Boo, yes, boo. Anyway, on that sour note,
any other pews that stuck out to you guys? Big fight scenes you liked?
Just because I overthink these things, I'm the person that likes replaying and thinking, oh, is there like a plot hole or anything like that? When I'm seeing the cubes and the orb shooting each other in engineering, and like that's like 2 shots away from blowing up the whole ship. Like,
oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, come on, guys.
Well, they did
like,
blow holes in the ship, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you saw that one scene, like I think a few seconds later, where one of them blows a hole in the hallway, and then they're like chasing each other down the corridor. Like, yeah, no, everyone's about to die. Like, bye-bye, episode's over.
Yeah, it definitely could have been pretty catastrophic, but obviously in this show, that's never going to be the outcome because that's no fun.
I know. Yeah, but I don't know. I just found it so hilarious that they're just literally like shooting in front of. I mean, it's as dangerous as Data and Geordi messing with an unknown phaser in front of the warp core, right? It's that same type of insanity that is like so silly, and I love it. Yeah.
Hey guys, how about just for creativity's sake, how about we just experiment with that stuff outside the engineering department?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't get the some mysterious person making a space rift this time as well. Right?
Yeah. Well, we'll circle back to that for the big questions, I think, because there's definitely some stuff there.
Right.
Easter eggs, Josh. I'm curious to hear as a Trek head what you saw as far as the little Easter eggs in this show.
Let's see. In this episode, I'm trying to remember this. I wish I had taken better notes on this one.
Well, I could start with the original series figures on Boimler's wall, right?
Yeah,
he's got the Kirk or the Spock and the Chief O'Brien, and
yep, he's got his toys,
Kirk, right?
Yeah. At the very beginning of the episode, just a standing around character is wearing a Geordi visor.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like 5 seconds into the episode, just one of the people on the crew walks by, and it's a woman, and she's wearing a Geordi visor. I was like, that's interesting. Okay. All right. Sure.
Well, the laurel, of course, on the woman's head, Ollie's head, right? That's kind of
the whole Zeus thing, right? Like that, Of course, we talked about that already, but the sort of callback to that episode, not for the first time, and maybe not for the last time, that they sort of dip in there, which is kind of fun. The Ronald B. Moore shout
yes.
out. Not Ronald D. Moore, Ronald B. Moore. So when they said it, I was like, that's okay. I remember there's something there, but I couldn't remember what it was. And it's that Ronald B. Moore is a 5-time Emmy winner as a producer who did special effects and did all these different projects in special effects over the years. And he is like a legend on his own. But often gets mistaken for Ronald D. Moore, who was a scriptwriter for Star Trek: The Next Generation, who went on to do Battlestar Galactica and other things. So people kind of forget this one. But as a special effects worker, like he worked on Ghostbusters, Next Generation, Enterprise. He worked at ILM. He worked on some of the Star Trek video games. Like this guy's like amazing at what he does. But jokingly took on the B initial because people kept mistaking him as Ronald Moore.
Right,
the other Ronald Moore. So I thought that was a great little shout out to...
When was that call out?
At one point, Boimler mentions him about 10 minutes into the episode.
Yeah, it's about around where Rutherford caught him with the pad in his quarters.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. If you have more, go ahead.
Yeah, just one last one is they brought it up multiple times, but again, when they go to the quote unquote crime scene inside the quarters, they make another Dixon Hill reference. You don't have to be Dixon Hill.
Right.
I love it when they bring up Dixon Hill, like it would matter to anybody outside of like a handful of nerds who want to go play 1930s detective on the holodeck. But
yep,
yeah.
Right.
Total aside, based off that comment, one of my favorite games that I've been playing lately is called Shadows of Doubt, and it's a procedurally generated like murder mystery game. You play a private eye, and my first save through I was Dixon Hill.
Nice.
So in this episode, one of the things I liked was the callback to TNG season 1 with the little handheld tractor beam.
Yeah.
And I'm watching that and I'm thinking, is that how Wesley like got to be like so good? Like we never see him use it again, but it's just like he's cheating and using all this tech, and that's how he's able to like look like he's such a mastermind. But
yeah.
No, I thought that was a fun little callback.
Yeah,
Cool.
This show, and it's funny because, obviously we talk about, we tend to sort of watch this show and fairly quickly jump on and do these recordings. I'm always fascinated by the day after, 2 days after, 3 days after, going on to Reddit, going on to some of the Trek blogs and just seeing the like myriad Star Trek references, Easter eggs, placements of things that people find. Because when you go over it, you can go over it with a fine-tooth comb. They always put little things in the background, characters, drinks, bottles, just weird stuff, because they're just huge Trek nerds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a great show for that. They really do care, and they really do, I think, take a lot of pleasure in peppering it with all this stuff.
Okay, so speaking of things in the background, there was a comment made that they just need Ferengi blood to finish the rainbow. And so you see...
What color is Ferengi blood, right?
So you see a few seconds later, it does stop, and it looks like yellow is probably what's missing. But have we ever seen that in Star Trek? Have we ever seen, like, Quark bleed yellow? I'm trying to remember.
I feel like at one point...
Rom was always the one getting hurt.
Yeah, I feel like at some point it did come out... trying to remember when. This is where I usually go to Memory Alpha because they always have this stuff.
Yeah. By the way, while you guys were talking there, I did ask ChatGPT what about the star date from 76874.
Mm-hmm.
According to ChatGPT, it's 2399 or the 24th century. So now I'm going to ask ChatGPT what color? Can't spell color. What color is Ferengi blood?
All I'm hearing right now is that there's a market for a LLM that is trained on Memory Alpha.
Yeah.
So according to ChatGPT, in a Deep Space Nine episode, The Magnificent Ferengi, where Ferengi injuries clearly shown their blue blood.
Oh,
Blue?
okay. But I thought there was blue in their spectrum somewhere, but...
Maybe based on copper, it says.
Huh.
Yeah, I swear there was blue blood already in that scene.
All right.
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
Time to hit up social media and start targeting Mike McMahon. How dare you?
Yeah, you're wrong again, honey. Okay.
That's right. All right. Quotes. They said what? They said what?
What's wrong with Boimler? Oh, just the usual stuff.
Yeah. I like, what happened? Did I have a lightning bolt in my ass? Just so
apparently you did, and you had to surgically removed too, right?
Yeah. What else do I have here? Oh, I love to see someone work so hard at being lazy from Mariner. I like that one. I might get that on a t-shirt.
Well, I got the two. The Rajik when he fell in the chasm, and we all deserve a chance to change the sheets.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Right after a bleep,
Yeah.
Because they bleep the bed.
Yeah.
I like towards the end. This is my break time, not yours.
Yeah. And the other one I had was from Mariner. Starfleet's kind of a 1 for me, 9 for them kind of deal.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
All right. The big question for this episode. So you mentioned it, Tim. There was no tie-in to this weird sort of what seemed to be the only through line for this season so far, which is somebody is creating these rifts in space. They had talked about it, but they didn't talk about it this episode. They didn't talk about it last episode. We got 4 episodes to go, so I think we're almost at the official trademarked Jaime Lopez hold my beer point of this, where they're going to have to start actually rounding this story in. But I do think it's interesting that we've had multiple references to this race of, we've got the giant hand, we got that. I don't know. I wonder if there's anything there. I wonder if Ollie's going to be in more episodes as this goes on, or if this was just sort of a coincidental thing.
I don't know. Clearly it's Michael Burnham's mother, right?
Oh, God. Or Michael Burnham herself. Oh, my God.
Well,
that would be hilarious if it was. It truly would be hilarious.
Why is there not a red angel in the background anywhere?
Yeah.
I think I did see Mike McMahon say that there were a lot of backdoor pilot like things that were added in this season. So, I don't know if that would include Ollie, if that would include Starbase 80. I mean, that would be an interesting, spin-off.
Yeah, we didn't have, what's her name, T'Lyn in this one either, right?
She was only in for like one scene. It's when Mariner's lying around the old lower decks area. T'Lyn sort of says, you're back in your old bunk.
Your old bunk, yeah.
But she didn't really get much play in this episode. Rutherford and Teddy didn't get much play in this episode.
Was it 9:40? I wonder if that had any significance.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was 9:28, I think, when she showed up.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah. Half an hour late.
Oh, right. Yes, that's why it was 9:28. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Overall, it was a Redorbulous episode.
Redorbulous?
Yeah, that's what they at one point.
We haven't talked about the facial hair yet.
Nor have we talked about Squaren.
Squaren, yes. Yeah, that was how quick the child appeared,
Yeah, I mean...
They were gone 5 minutes.
Yeah, clearly this is a fast procreating pair of species, but yeah.
Well, and the other trope we didn't talk about, I don't know if it's a trope or an Easter egg, but they're gathering on the ship for peace talks. I don't know how many episodes they did with that, right?
Yeah, well, they really lean... That's a great way to do cheap episodes, right? Bring a few people in, throw them in costumes, and have them move from room to room like a screwball.
And somebody
comedy.
Dies, exactly.
Yeah.
Except this wasn't a few people. This was like 100 from each side. Like, did they need everybody there for these peace talks? Considering they could just fly out the shuttle bay whenever they want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it seemed a little overdone.
Well, they had to make a big giant cube and big giant orb, though, right?
That's true. It's true. It's all set up for that scene.
I suppose. I would just picture them going outside and calling all their buddies. And I mean, you could have had almost like a Borg cube coming through the cloud moment. And it's just, a bunch of these guys.
Yep.
That's it. Oh, one last thing before we go. Laurel Goodwin played Yeoman Colt on The Cage.
There you go.
Yeah. Now we can sleep at night knowing we don't have to fact check that one for next week.
Now a word from our sponsor.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico. How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today is actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.
Now back to the show.
All right, so we move on to Silo.
Yeah, so we'll just give some early impressions from the first episode of season 2 of Silo. We yeah, we kind of pick up where the last one left off, and it's hard to get into it too far without spoilers. So, Josh, strap in. It's we left the first season with Juliet out exploring what's beyond her silo, and this episode picks up with her discovering a new silo, and it's some of it's told in flashbacks. It's kind of an interesting.
It's a bit like The Walking Dead too, right?
It felt very quiet, right? Like obviously we got to see like a bunch of different flashbacks, but this one was really a quiet episode. Like really, a lot of it is. I saw a comparison online. Somebody said it's like Castaway or something, where you kind of see somebody going through a lot of the motions, but they don't talk very much because they're by themselves. But I think if anybody can pull that off in today's cinematic world, it's Rebecca Ferguson, who is just dynamite. So it was a good start, but definitely a kind of a slow and a quiet one. It'll be interesting to see whether they start to ramp up the action and sort of check back in with some of our previous characters and stuff in the old silo as we move towards.
Well, according to the trailer, they will. But
yeah. So it's hard to say definitively, like, oh my God, what a great, like, it wasn't like grab you by your, scruff of the neck kind of beginning. It didn't kick off with a bang. It kind of kicked off with a sort of quiet, creepy vibe.
Yeah, it was a bit like we were talking about last week about Lara Croft. It was kind of like an episode like that where she was going through this derelict silo. I'm surprised. I guess maybe because the thing was flooded, she didn't go down and turn on the generators, which was her job in the old silo,
Yeah, I mean, having read the book, there's definitely a lot more adventures to come there, but it's...
Okay,
yeah, I mean, she sort of realized her worst fear again in this episode. We've seen that told in multiple parts, is that because of the circumstances of Silo, nobody knows how to swim. So when she falls in, we saw that a little bit in the first season, where at one point she's trying to keep the generator from overheating, and she's spraying it with water, and the room is filling up with water, and she's freaking out because, of course, they live in this underground sort of gigantic silo where there would be no place for a swimming pool or a lake or anything. So one of her greatest fears is not being able to swim. And so we saw that again here, where she falls into the water and she's freaking out because that's just the scariest thing ever for somebody who just equates water to death, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, really can't talk about what happens at the end there because, but am I thinking that is what they sort of set the story up in the beginning?
Yes.
If you know what I'm saying, Jonathan?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
Yes.
Well, you've read the book, so you know.
Yeah.
And you don't need to
uh,
hold back for my sake.
Well, we don't want to.
Well, so you don't want to spoil it for the fans who are listening to.
Yeah,
so.
we try and keep these ones high level. We don't get into the weeds quite as much as we do with some of the Trek and sort of longer stories. But
it's a good show. You should watch it. We're trying not to spoil it. So, and the reason we're doing that, if it was not worth your watching, Josh, we would be spoiling this.
We would. It's true.
That's fair.
It's such an enjoyable series. We don't want to. We want everybody to be able to enjoy it in their own pace because it's terrific. It's a terrific show. Josh, you mentioned earlier that Apple TV is turning out some great products and man, the production value on this is fantastic. It looks great. I love that they, I'm sure they use the same sets for the derelict silo as they did for the first silo.
Of course. Yeah.
But the way that they make it all roughed up and like you said, Tim, Walking Dead, right? Here's a city that's been left to ruins. Well, here's a silo that's been left to ruins. The set decor, the way they've made it look with all of the 30 years of falling apart is really unsettling. Mm-hmm. It's such a great set.
Yeah, exactly.
Got to cash those Apple checks on the set production. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's kind of a bit like the I don't think if people have seen the last episode of season 1, they'll know this is very much like that. What was that? The Dark Matter, right? Mm. Where because she's got like her choice of silos to go and explore now, right? Too.
Well, this was the closest one, and she was starting to run out of air.
Oh, true, right? Yeah.
And B, the door happened to be open, so.
Yeah, somewhat opened.
Yeah, somewhat opened. Yes, true. Yeah, that this portion of the story in the book is told from inside of Juliet's head, and is really like, it's intense. Like her fear she's going to suffocate, fear she can't get in, and just her being so emotionally overwhelmed at what she's seeing and stuff. It's really, really done well in the book. It's hard to capture that, obviously, on film without narration or anything like that. But I thought Rebecca Ferguson just screaming while she's trying to push the door open, and just the level of physical exertion and stuff, I think captured some of that really well.
For sure.
How about Dune Legacy? That was another
good show. A bit like the beginning of House of Dragons, where they had the two younger characters. I had to go back in IMDb and check that they de-age the actresses or whatever, but they found a couple of actresses that looked exactly like the two older ladies, right? Julia Ormond and
Olivia Williams.
Yeah. They found some really amazing looking actors, because it's funny, because I kind of almost knew, well, maybe because I've seen the trailer, that I kind of expected her to be the older version, right? So
yeah, well, it's funny because they
interesting.
They cast Jessie Barden as the young Valia, who was the Emily Watson character, and I'm actually a big fan of hers. She was on a Netflix series called End of the Effin' World. That was terrific. She's really, really great in that. And so I was really happy to see her pop in. And then when I realized that she was just for the scene, now maybe they'll tell more of this story in flashbacks. Maybe there'll be more flashes back, but I don't think they need to. So I was both excited to see her, but also kind of sad we didn't see her for very long. But then when they flashed to the future, and I was like, oh, that's right, Emily Watson's the lead character, and that's how they set that up. And she's a fantastic actor, Oscar-nominated actor. And then Olivia Williams, who I love. Olivia Williams, she's fantastic. She's in one of my favorite movies ever, Rushmore. Which she is just a captivating actor. So I was very excited to see her there. And then, as you go through the episode, you're like, oh, Mark Strong is here. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then you sort of keep going through and you're like, oh yeah, it definitely kind of catches you. But I don't know. Did you love this episode? Were you like, oh, I'm in, I'm all in on this stuff? Like I found it to be a little bit like it doesn't suffer from the prequel problem in that there's only been the two
10,000 years in advance.
Well, that's it. It is, I mean, if you've seen the two Dune movies, it's a pretty easy walk.
Human beings have not lived on Earth more than 10,000 years, or just around that, right? So
yeah, I found myself a little bit thinking, like, who cares? Like the stakes are low, you know what I mean? Like there's like this sort of palace intrigue piece of it, which you're right, I think is a fair comparison to the sort of House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones. Like these people behind the scenes, they're whispering, they're plotting, they're trying to sort of set things into motion, and some people are trying to push for one side and some people are pushing for the other. But I don't know that I feel the investment in the Duneverse to care enough about it. Maybe that's what's missing,
right?
And I'm hoping that I'll care more, but I'm also mildly concerned that they're only doing six episodes.
Yeah. By the way, I was trying to search for Dune Legacy on IMDb, and nothing was coming up. It's Dune Prophecy.
Prophecy. That's right. Prophecy.
The episode is called The Hidden Hand, for those of you driving at home.
Yes.
Transporting at home.
Yes. I don't know. It's Josh, have you seen the Dune movies?
I have not. No.
No? Are you a Dune fan at all? Have you read any of the books, or do you care at all about the Duneverse?
I have been around. How do I put this? I've heard enough references to it over the decades, but have not been compelled enough to dive into it.
Yeah. I mean, what drew me most of all to the most recent two Dune movies was Denis Villeneuve, who Tim and I are both big fans of. Fantastic director, very amazing visual director. Loved Blade Runner and some of the stuff that he's worked on.
Arrival,
absolutely. So that was enough to sort of bring me to it. But I also found myself thinking, I don't know. I know there's a large number of sci-fi fans who are fans of the books. They read all the original Frank Herbert's, plus there's been all the Herbert's son and Kevin J. Anderson did a whole sort of bunch of sequel stories, which actually this is based on a little bit based on a trilogy of books that those two wrote together in the early 2000s. But I gotta admit, I'm sure this is going to be good. It's an HBO show. The production value seems high. I like some of the actors, but it still didn't quite grab me. And maybe it's that I know that it's a limited series, and maybe it's that I just don't have that level of investment. Maybe you have to be more of a Dune head to be into it, but I didn't knock my socks off my feet. It looks great. There's some great performances, but I kind of want to see what comes.
Okay, so this was not a Frank Herbert story. It was Sisterhood of Dune, right?
Yeah, so this was from the trilogy that was done in like early 2000s. It was Kevin J. Anderson, and I can't remember Herbert's kid's name.
Yeah, Brian Herbert.
That's right. They've done multiple things. I think they've done 3 trilogies over the last 20 years that basically try and flesh out more of the Dune backstory and stuff. So yeah, this isn't a Frank Herbert story, and I guess that's the thing that I'm wondering about is like, is this series in the end, I guess what I'm hoping for from it is that it's going to tell me more about this universe so that I will care about it more. And that's not what I got off the first part. I was like, it seemed like so much more style over substance.
Well, mind you, I'm a big fan of Travis Fimmel, who played...
he's the guy from Vikings? I've never watched that.
Yeah, Vikings, yeah. Ragnar Lothbrok, who's a real character, a real person, I mean, Ragnar Lothbrok. But, he's just compelling. I don't know what if it's the color of his eyes or something. But
he seems like more intense young Brad Pitt or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's got a very sort of...
he's got an intensity to him as a performer.
Yeah, but strangely, he's Australian. Surprisingly, when you hear him talk off camera, it's kind of weird.
Yeah,
because he plays Swedish or Finnish in Vikings, right? But he's an interesting actor, right? So
yeah.
Well, this is sort of his breakout role.
I'm definitely going to keep watching. I'm not like him, one and done. We've had a few of these, Josh, over the last little while where we've talked about things like the Tomb Raider cartoon that came on Netflix. I think a couple of us gave that a try and we're like, nope. There are some things that you can cast a judgment on pretty quickly. Like I say, this one, it looked fantastic. It is a little light on the character development. Like, we're supposed to invest and care in some of these characters quickly, and you're like, not really. But we'll see.
Yeah, it's a bit like The Crown too, in that sense, right? Like, in terms of like, you're supposed to care about the person.
Yeah, you're gonna have to work real hard to make me care about the royal family in England.
All right. Well, it depends on how you were raised, I guess, right?
That's right.
Right. Well, and speaking of one and done, like, so Jaime recommended a couple of things that have been on my watch list for a while, and one was We Crash, which is about the WeWork thing, and the other one was the story about Elizabeth Holmes' Dropout, right?
Well,
I watched one episode. Yeah. I watched one episode of We Crashed, and I think I understand the entire show. Do I need to watch any more? It was my sort of review of that show. I mean, because he's a jerk, and she's kind of a jerk, and they ran this company into the ground. I mean,
yeah.
They made it up out of thin air and ran it into the ground. Done. Do I need to watch the rest of the episodes, right?
Yeah.
That was my question on Slack, and nobody's answered, so I don't know. And then I watched the Elizabeth Holmes one. It was a bit better story because like you don't get into Jonathan doesn't like these kind of like Steve Jobs kind of Compaq, visit the history of Compaq, what's that Halt and Catch Fire kind of stories, right?
Well, the BlackBerry one, and
the BlackBerry one is really good. You got to watch that one. But the Elizabeth Holmes, it's got a bit of that sort of like there's enough tech in there that I'm interested to kind of carry you through. And I've watched 3 or 4 episodes, but I mean, it seems like a kind of a disaster. And then I made the mistake of going on YouTube and looking at actual footage about Elizabeth Holmes and like, okay, well, maybe I don't want to watch the rest of this. Because she does seem like a bit of a Musk Gates kind of, not a person to really follow. Anyway, with that, let's move on to our watch lists and talk about what's coming.
Yeah. I made some time this week to watch Transformers 1 on Paramount Plus. This is a movie that came out earlier this year. It is a sort of prequel to all things Transformers. It basically is the origin story of Optimus Prime and Megatron, and they turned it into kind of a buddy story where like these guys were friends, they used to hang out, but circumstances throughout the story kind of lead them in different directions where, the Optimus Prime character ends up, sort of trying to find the good in things, and the Megatron character kind of ends up sort of turning to the dark side, as it were. And I'll be honest, I wasn't going in with very high expectations because there have been so many Transformers projects over the years, live action films, cartoons, CGI things, all kinds of different projects, video games, everything, comic books. So I find my mileage varies. There are some Transformers stories that have been done over the last, 40 years that I really love, and some where I'm like, that's not for me. This was great. It was really enjoyable. As a watch, as a movie, it makes sense. It's clear. It's got good character development. I always find it weird whenever Peter Cullen is not Optimus Prime. It's always going to bother me just because I grew up hearing that voice. I was a Transformers fan from the time I was a child, so I'll always sort of default to him as the voice of Optimus Prime in my head. But strangely, they had Chris Hemsworth playing the Optimus Prime character in an American accent, which was weird because I don't know that I've ever heard him do a not Australian accent, or I guess he's kind of doing British when he does Thor. But and they had Brian Tyree Henry, who is one of my favorite actors, as Megatron. And so that was an interesting take as well, because he kind of does bring some blackness to the character, which is really interesting. Also, standouts, Scarlett Johansson's in it, John Hamm's in it, Steve Buscemi's is in it, Lawrence Fishburne's in it. Like, it's a good cast of voice actors. Although, I gotta be honest, sometimes I kind of don't want famous people to be in my cartoon movies because it takes me out for a second. I'm like, oh, it's Scarlett Johansson.
Does, yeah.
Like, I don't need Scarlett Johansson. I need a good voice actor, and she's a good voice actor, but completely unnecessary. I think it's really just like, oh, they got these stars to do the voices. Like, I don't need it.
Well, the weird thing about that is, like you said, I mean, I'm just thinking about Finding Nemo, which I'll talk about in a sec. But yeah, you're right, because it's Scarlett Johansson doing Scarlett Johansson, right? Like, it's not like, you're right. I mean, whenever, like, even the one about the ants with Dave Foley and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, like, you can't get it once you find out who the character is. You just see them. Oh, they're playing an ant now, right? As opposed to believing it's an ant talking.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and there are some terrific voice performances by very famous people throughout the history of animated films, all the way back to early Disney stuff. People don't know who these people are now, but back in the day, these were the same contemporary famous voices of people you would have known through pop culture. Now they're just, oh, that's the voice of King Louis. Well, like, no, actually, that's Louis Prima. He was an amazing singer who was a very famous person in the 1960s. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like I say, I don't need it. I understand why it's there. I think they all did a great job. I enjoyed the performances. John Hamm, in particular, he plays Sentinel Prime, who's this sort of schmoozy leader, kind of smarmy character, and he does a great job with his voice of making you understand what kind of character he is. So again, the good performances, but just maybe not for me, that the sort of celebrity of it all. But
well, maybe the names on the marquee bring people in too. That may be part of it. Right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think some people are like, well, it's a cartoon or whatever, but I can enjoy because I really and they cast likable people. People like Chris Hemsworth. People like Scarlett Johansson. People like Steve Buscemi. People like Brian Tyree Henry. It makes sense. Anyways. That aside, it's a fun movie. It's a totally easy watch. If you're looking for something, this is not, I wouldn't put this in the Paw Patrol pile of like, put it on when you're doing laundry. It's not that. You can sit down and watch it. The animation's terrific. They do a good job. There's enough complexity to the characters to make you invest with them. and there's enough action to sort of satisfy a broad audience. It's a good watch, and it makes me really curious to know whether they will do more of this. I know it did perform actually surprisingly well, considering this has been a real down year for movies other than cartoons. So it performed pretty well in the box office. I wonder if they'll do more of this type of thing. Are we going to get a Transformers 2 or something else? But yeah, it's a good movie. I would recommend it. It's on Paramount Plus now. If you want to check it out, I give it a thumbs up.
Yeah. So, quick question, Josh: where do you fit into the Transformers universe?
I saw the first movie, and I did not follow after that. I remember I remember the shows as a kid. I never really got into them then either. I don't know what it was. I mean, like I get why people can like it and want to watch it, and I don't know. I just never felt compelled to see any of the newer Transformer movies.
You aren't missing much, I'll be honest. And
Shia LaBeouf.
I actually covered those as a reporter back in the day. Went out and interviewed all the players in that one, and had to make smiley faces and go, "Oh no, this is great! This is great." Not a great series of films in my estimation. I'm a little more into the animated, and I'm a longtime comic fan, so I read some of those too. But
I used to collect the videos. I remember having to try. We used to hunt all over the place for the VHSs, right?
I still have some of my VHSs, and I have the entire run of all the original series, and actually some of the 1990s stuff as well on my DVD shelf / Blu-ray shelf, still here in the house. So yeah,
cool. So Josh, do you have a watch list item for us?
Well, the only thing I can recommend is what I'm currently watching right now, as someone who apparently can't get out of the past. I'm working on I think it's my 4th watch through of Babylon 5.
Really?
It just felt appropriate. I don't know.
Okay, Josh, I've never watched a single episode of Babylon 5, and I need you to sell me on why I still have not found a compelling enough case to watch Babylon 5. Why is it so good that you've watched it that many times?
I think it goes back to why Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek. I grew up on TNG, so I liked, Data and Geordi and Worf, and that's great. But between season 1 and season 7, how much did those characters grow? How much did the universe that we were in grow? It did, but I think there could have been more growth there. Then you watch DS9, and you've got characters that aren't even regulars, Garrick and Rom and Nog, and they start out so differently from how they end up in season 7. Right? Nog. I mean, Nog is just this little scrappy Ferengi boy who's probably getting into trouble, and his uncle owns the bar and everything, to the middle of the show being, I don't want to be like my dad, and pleading with Sisko to let him go to Starfleet. And at the end, he's like this proud lieutenant that just got promoted, who is like such a responsible character, totally different from where he was, And so
and the whole spy thing and with Garrick, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that's such a cool, because I kind of often wonder, like, when they start writing these series, do they write like the first series and then they carry on and they come up with this? But sometime in the time off between shows, they come up with this. Hey, why don't we make Garrick into a secret spy kind of thing, right?
Right. And
they did allude to that pretty early.
Well, yeah, they alluded to it early, but I will name drop another podcast right now, but I've been listening to the Delta Flyers. It's, that
can be your watch list item, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's true. I do listen to that every week, but you got Robert Duncan McNeil and Garrett Wang, who are, Voyager actors, but they're currently watching DS9, and they recently had Andy Robinson on, who played Garrick, and he was talking about how it was supposed to be a one-off, but they liked him enough to bring him back. But that was just the writers seeing how good that Garrick could be, and he really was. He went from being this plain simple tailor was he a spy? Like, do we know? Can we trust him? Who is this guy? To at the end, he's basically right along with the regulars for the last 6 episodes, fighting to free Cardassia. Like, again, that growth that we saw in a character, and he's not even a regular cast member. I love that about DS9. That's why I went on that tangent. Anyway, Babylon 5 is, if you like the growth that you see in characters, the growth that you saw in the universe of DS9 with, you know, the better understanding of the Bajorans and the Cardassians, the war that happens with the Dominion, take those high-level concepts into a sci-fi show that was planned from the beginning as a 5-year story. So the first season is not the writers getting established and, you know, oh, is this show going to make it past season 2? They knew where it was going to go from the very beginning. There are threads that are laid out in the first handful of episodes that you may not even think about. And then seasons 3, 4, and 5, they come back to them. You're like, oh, right, I remember that. You have to approach it from that. My mistake when I first tried to watch Babylon 5 15 years ago was trying to view it as Star Trek. And it failed. I watched the first episode, and I see this crazy-haired Centauri guy named Londo Mollari, and I'm thinking, oh, he's just like Quark. He's going to be this comic relief, and okay, so it's not Star Trek. I mean, they're on a space station. I mean, where are they going to go? I had to get rid of that mindset and actually sit down and get like 5 episodes in, and I start seeing some of the threads connect. And by the middle of season 1, there's some, again, not main characters that are introduced that start causing some, we'll say, some conflict, and it just gets a lot deeper than you would expect. So that's what drew me into Babylon 5, and I'm watching it again just because I think it's just such a wonderful piece of science fiction. There is, of course, the controversy. It was airing the same time as DS9, so and it was originally pitched to Paramount. So was there some stealing of ideas back and forth? I ignore those completely out of the picture. It just happens to be a show that's set on a space station. But it is a wonderful, wonderful show that you just got to give it a chance. It touches on a lot of themes, a lot of I'll try not to, you know, I don't want to spoil it, but you know, getting into concepts of nationalism, of you know, they have a whole, gosh, I'm
like class systems and stuff like that. Or?
Yeah, you got like class, and obviously there's conflict that comes up between the races. There is rising of like fascism on Earth, and they have to deal with that, and just conflicts without, conflicts within, all set up in it with an interesting approach that is kind of fun to watch. And I say that as knowing what happens to some main characters and how even from the very beginning, when the show was put together, the characters were even written with what's the term? Not backdoors, but, you know, like if they need to drop out of the series, they can drop out. It's not like a unexpected sudden hit to the storyline. He had it set up so that the story could adapt if any main characters had to leave, which happens in the show. So it flows. It is really well done. And I mean, like I said, I'm on my 4th time through in the last 10 years, I think.
So is it a show you have to start watching from the beginning? So I know I've watched episodes over the years and just kind of when I was channel surfing, right? But...
Yeah. Well, let's compare it again to DS9. Would you say, can you start in, you know, season 4, season 5 of DS9 and kind of know what's going on with the Dominion or what's going on with Bajoran religion? Like you'd have to you'd have to go back. Babylon 5 is kind of the same way. It's really written as a 5-year novel. Like season 1 is your opening chapter, kind of setting up what's going on. 2, 3, and 4, you've got the big stuff happening. Season 5, then kind of like your end of your novel. It's starting to wind up and tie up loose threads. So you have to kind of approach it like that.
I'll tell you, Josh. One of the most challenging experiences of my life as a journalist was I had the opportunity to meet Mike Straczynski, the J. Michael Mike Straczynski, when he was in Toronto. Yep. And I actually got to meet him a few times, and I was really lucky because he was very, very nice to me and everything. And I just prayed to God the whole time he did not bring up Babylon 5 because I had not watched a moment of it. Luckily, we were there to talk about comic books because he was working on Spider-Man, I think, at the time. And I was just... He is, yeah. He's actually working on Captain America right now and doing a really nice job. I'm reading that monthly. But... Yeah, I remember sitting there with him, and he's a very well known, very very talented writer, and I was just like, waiting for him to be like, "Well, did you ever see this episode?" And I was like, "Oh no, please don't do that." So I'm so glad that it never came up in our conversation. So thank goodness for that. But yeah,
nice. Yeah. Well, thanks for also bringing up his name because my mind was blanking out. I was like, it's something, but yeah.
Yeah, and again, I've read countless comics that he's written over the years, and obviously, I think we've all seen some of his movies. I mean, even you, Tim, have seen some of his movies because he is actually one of the co-writers of Thor, the first Thor movie back in 2011. So, he wrote World War Z. Just like all kinds of stuff. So, yeah.
No. I'm trying to remember, so I have a couple of other podcasts, and one of the things we asked on those was we start off with Star Trek or Star Wars is one of the rapid fire questions, and then I interviewed James Thompson once, and he introduced the idea of Doctor Who, and so the question evolved into Doctor Who, and eventually I ended up with somebody who was like you, who was a big Babylon 5 was his go-to sci-fi, right? So yeah, you're not the first person I've heard, but that's probably the best, I think, pitch I've heard for a reason why anybody would want to watch Babylon 5. So thanks for that. Well, pretty good.
And I also want to throw in as well, because of how he wrote, the whole series. He didn't take it a season at a time. We see that with, DS9 and TNG and other sci-fi shows where, okay, you've got the season and then the writers don't know if there's another season, so they're not going to open up a thread. They're not going to start something. He pitched it and approached it as a 5-year show, so he wasn't afraid to leave things dangling at the end of a season. And he also wrote 92 of the 110 episodes of the show. So,
yeah, you'll never get that again. That's amazing.
Well, I'm a big fan of long tail sci-fi like Asimov and Heinlein and even Stephen King, who map out an entire world like Asimov did right from the very beginning. Heinlein kind of carried characters that he liked from previous novels into other stories, and then he would introduce brand new characters. And then he had an episode, a book called The Number of the Beast, where he brought all of his favorite characters together in one story, right? Mm-hmm. But so I'm a big fan of somebody who plans from beginning to end and then puts these pieces in, and it's a big giant puzzle that you kind of put through, go through at the end, through the whole thing. So it's an interesting. I like that better than we gotta put bums in seats and sell soap and gotta keep the ratings up or we're not gonna have a next season. And we just talked about Scott Pilgrim and there's been many other things that we've watched over the years. I mean, I watched the original Dark Matter, which got canceled right in the middle of on a cliffhanger, season 3 or whatever. And then the other one was the one that Amazon picked up. There's been a couple of sci-fis I've watched over the years that just got canceled, and you hope and you pray that they get picked up again. That doesn't always happen, right?
Honestly, I don't get into new shows because over the past 15 years, I will start watching something and it's canceled after the first season. There are shows that I even think back to, like Awake, starring Jason Isaacs, where he was, I believe he was a cop who got into an accident. And he starts living 2 lives. One life, his wife had died in the car accident, and the other life.
I saw that was a great one. Yeah,
it was great. And then it gets canceled. And I'm like, I know it was based off of something that I could have read and gone into, but it's as a show, I wanted to watch it, and it's canceled. Why do this? So I really got bummed. I had that. There was Flash Forward, I think, was around that same time.
Oh, The Expanse is the one I was trying to remember. Yeah.
Oh, The Expanse. Yeah. And then there's other shows over the years that have just kind of discouraged me from getting into. I have to wait until it's out for 2 or 3 seasons, and then I'll start watching it.
So you used to have sci-fi in the States. We have a channel here in Canada called the Space Channel, which was where I would just, Sunday afternoon, they would drop a new thing. I mean, that's kind of how we started watching bits of Firefly and other things like that. Like,
Battlestar Galactica and
Galactica. I watched that one from the video. And it took me like a year or two to sell Jonathan on watching it, right? Because he was so burned by the original one, right?
It's true. In fairness, I also had a newborn at that point, but that gave me some time to sit and watch stuff late at night. I think I watched Battlestar Galactica, Buffy, and Angel all just while bottle feeding my babies.
Well, yeah. So speaking of really bad old movies, I just happened to stumble across this. I've seen this before, but I thought it was kind of appropriate for what we were talking about in the past. I'm a fan of Planet of the Apes, right? From going back from the very beginning with Charlton Heston, and the second movie, which was pretty bad, back in the 70s and 80s when you had a sequel out, the second episode was always horrible, right? Star Trek notwithstanding, but. So Paul Williams played an orangutan. They had, different classes of people in these shows. And back then it was all practical effects. So there was a gentleman, and I've forgotten his name now, but who did all the makeup. And I got sold on Planet of the Apes, not just because the movie was on, but because before I saw it on TV back in the late 70s, they showed an hour-long special about the makeup, about putting these actresses and actors into the, chimpanzees and gorillas and orangutans. Orangutans were sort of the intellectual class, right? And Paul Williams, who you've probably never heard of, was on Johnny Carson, who you may also have never heard of. But Paul Williams was a huge, a TV music writer, pretty popular, but notoriously short. Right, he wrote Phantom of the Paradise and a few other things. He's written some pretty big movies, but he played an orangutan, and he showed up on the Carson show in full makeup with the hand, like his hands were all hairy, and he had the hand tooled leather outfit that the orangutans wore, plus the full makeup and the wigs and stuff like that, and it's a funny thing because he doesn't. Carson keeps trying to dig about what the movie's about, and Paul Williams just off the cuff comes up with these really weird, totally not related, analogies of what the story's about. Like he's a struggling author who can't figure out how to write this first book, and he's being hounded by his girlfriend, which has nothing to do with the actual story, right? In fact, the stories he proposes were probably better than Battle of the Planet of the Apes, to be honest with you. So yeah, I'll do a link in the show notes here for the YouTube clip for that one. And I just found out this afternoon that Alien Romulus is now streaming on Disney Plus. So I sat down and watched it, and I mean, it got some pretty bad reviews, and I'm a huge Aliens fan. Like first movie Alien, obviously, and then Aliens was pretty good, and then the franchise
Aliens is great. Come on.
That's what I'm saying. Aliens is good, but I was going to say, if I could, that later on they started. I mean, I've been a fan of all of these movies. I'm also, there's some Skywalker movie that I like, but anyway, but it's probably pretty obscure. You guys probably never heard of it, but Alien Romulus is actually pretty good. It got bad reviews, and I don't know why, but because it does pick up on the story. It's a bit, it's a very much a Ridley Scott kind of. I don't know if he's involved in it, but it's got Scott Free did produce it, but it's very sort of that sort of universe, the Blade Runner-y, These kids are they're working in the mines and they're trying to get out, and of course is it Wayland Company? It starts with them going and collecting the alien that Ripley threw out into space, right? Because they want to examine it. And anyway, as you can imagine, the ship that they're on becomes derelict, and these kids want to try and escape this. They're destitute because they have to work in the mines to pay off the debts or whatever that their parents had accrued, and so they've had this plan to go and go steal the ship and plan this 9-year journey to the next star system kind of thing. But they need cryotubes, and the cryotubes are on this ship, which of course, as we know, has aliens on it or has xenomorphs on it, but there's a character that they bring back because there's a couple of characters that were in the original movie. Of course, there's also the I'm trying to remember now with the artificial humans, right? There's of course is an artificial human who we find out early on is an artificial human, but and the main character is the heroine, of course, of the story. So it's very reminiscent. It's kind of like Force Awakens is a remake of Star Wars: A New Hope, right? In fact, there are a couple of lines that they drop in the movie that are literally lifted right out of original Alien movie. And the Ripley character kind of mirrors the plot line of this young lady that's in this movie. But you know what? I totally like it. Blows up real good, literally, and there's acid blood, and there's xenomorphs, and all that kind of stuff. And it's compelling. It's a bit nail biting in a few places, but if you I recommend it. I mean, I probably give it 4 stars, maybe 3.5 stars out of 5 kind of thing, right? So it's not the I don't know how many Rotten Tomatoes it got, but it's not the bad movie that everybody thinks it is, right? I thought it was pretty good. It probably would have been good to see it in the theater too, right? Because it's got the vistas and all that kind of stuff in it, right? And special effects are good and that kind of stuff, right? So Alien Romulus, go watch it on Disney Plus.
Well, that's what your Apple Vision Pro is for, right?
Yeah, well, I did watch it on my Apple Vision Pro as well. That's another thing too.
Nice.
But I mean, the Apple Vision Pro is great for watching movies for sure. But I watched it in the kitchen with the dogs running around and didn't quite get into the whole atmosphere of it, and I had to keep stopping and starting because of life got in the way. But it was a good movie. I wanted to make sure I finished it before we got here today, because I wanted to find out how it ended, and it ended with a very similar parallel to the Alien movie. That's all I can say about that, if you've seen Alien.
And they did announce this week that there's a timeline now for the Alien Earth series, too, that's coming. Disney Plus, they put out a trailer this week, and it said it's coming next summer. So we actually have a little bit of a timeline to that. So it seems like the Alien verse is growing in the Disney era, too. So that's good.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have the whole Alien and the Predator series, too. I don't know what's happening to the Predators, but, AVP was a good movie too, right?
The first one was.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I meant. AVP, Aliens versus Predator.
Yep.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, Jonathan, if people want to touch with you, where do they find you?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram as @JPK News, or you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/@JPK.
And Josh, if people want to get in touch with you, where do they find you?
Well, they can find me on most of the socials. I am at Josh Hrach, but that is spelled HRACH. And my website is Josh's Pad, PADD, like a Star Trek pad.com.
All right. Well, my name is Timitra, TIMMITRA, and you can find me on Mastodon. You can find me on Threads, on Instagram. But I got to say, Blue Sky, which I joined last July, a year ago July, has blown up this week. I don't know if there's some event early in November. I can't remember what it was. I can't be able to put my finger on it, but I mentioned before that I was leaving that other social network, and I have now officially purged all of my tweets from there, and I migrated them all over to Blue Sky. And in the last week, I've gone from 200 to 1.3 thousand followers, and I'm following 829 just in a week. It's nuts, right? So that's Timitra on Blue Sky app.
I wonder where all those users are coming from and leaving.
Well, and it's funny because people are complaining that your notification, I've got right now on my phone, I'm looking at it, I have 27 notifications, and this is since 3 hours ago. So I've gotten 30 people following me in the last hour and a bit, right? So, and it's just been like that since last Sunday, and then we're Wednesday or Thursday now, right? So, yeah, I'm amazed that, I have 2,000 followers on Twitter, and that probably took me, I was on Twitter for 16 years. So, that's a long time to build an audience. And it's crazy because, if you're into things like I'm into Vision OS, right? So, you can start these things called starter packs, where you basically go through and you collect up to 150 people to follow in a starter pack. Like you could do one on comics, for example, Jonathan, right? And all the people that you should follow about who do comics, whether they're authors or reporters, whatever. And then when people come along and they want to find who to follow, they can click on your starter pack and just choose follow all, and all those people become people they'll get notifications from, right? So, and there are tools to import your Twitter followers into one of the Fediverses. You could do it into Mastodon. You could also do it into Blue Sky, which I've done. But yeah, I mean, it's just amazing the number of people that are just all of a sudden, like I said, it's a mass exodus from some social site. I can't remember which one it is.
YZ, something like that.
Yeah, but yeah, some one letter 27. I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, so that's me, Timitra on bluesky.social apparently. So yeah, come on over. The water's fine. Everybody's moved over. And so far, it's been pretty good, right? Can I tell you a secret? So one of the things I did was when I moved over to Mastodon, I changed my handle to be my Mastodon address, right? And I thought last night, you know what? I'm going to make my handle on Twitter I'm not going to call it that other thing, but I made it my Blue Sky address. And I got a certain follower following me this morning, if you can believe it. Starts with E and ends with K. So one of the nice things about any social apps, which people don't really realize, is you can silence words. Like you can mute words. I did this on Twitter back in 2016. There was some guy who starts with T and ends with P, muted that person, and my Twitter's been fine. Occasionally, if I want to go and find stuff, I can, right? But I just don't get that noise in my Twitter feed, right, or my social feed. And I very happily blocked the person who followed me this morning. Yeah, so yeah, come on over to Blue Sky.
Yeah, I think Blue Sky, Mastodon, that's the place. Stay away from the algorithms.
Yeah, well, I think that's another key part. Cool. Anyway, so I guess that's it. Until next week, we'll see you guys in the future. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. This is Jean-Luc Picard. Shut up, Wesley. Sorry, say again. Just the tag. Gotcha. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spotcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpotcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
Now Mike comes on and tells Wesley to shut up, and or this is CNN. Shut up, Wesley. And then and now we're in the after show, and then we can talk about whatever you want, or we can sign off, whatever you like.
Well, I
Baseball,
suppose
football, hockey.
Since I haven't touched the show notes, do you want me to add Babylon 5 under the watch list?
No, I can do that.
That's just for us, really. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I forgot to mention it. It's free on Tubi with ads. So
Tubi. Ooh.
Yeah, I've been watching a series on Tubi. I've been going down the Tubi rabbit hole. I started watching this British series that I'd always intended to watch called Skins. That's I really wanted to see it because I knew that through its reputation that it basically had launched the careers of like a whole bunch of people. And I kind of wanted to sort of see these young actors and sort of see if you could see the potential there. Like, was it like, oh, did everybody know right off the top that like Nicholas Hoult and Dev Patel and like all these people who were in it were like destined to be great? And I watched the first couple of seasons and I was like, oh yeah, like this is amazing. Like the first season, it's Nicholas Hoult, it's Dev Patel, it's Kaya Scodelario from the what was the name of that Maze Runner movies. Hannah Murray, who was she was the wildling girl who ends up going with oh god, I'm forgetting all my Game of Thrones names now. She's the one who ends up getting pregnant by her father and ends up getting like taken out of there, and she ends up surviving. And Joe Dempsey, who plays the blacksmith kid who's the bastard son of the Baratheons. And anyways, there's just a whole bunch of people who were they were cast as like, Daniel Kaluuya. Yeah, that's the other person who's on it, who is like, Oscar nominated actor now for Get Out. All these people who were just like 16, 17-year-old kids when they got cast in this as like amateur actors. They weren't even like most of them weren't even professionals at the time. They're sort of playing these like kids growing up in Bristol. And yeah, it's just like, it's kind of an edgy coming of age drama series with some comedy mixed in, and it's good. But I was like, the entire run is on Tubi. You can't watch it anywhere else. It's a British series. You can't find it anywhere else on any other streaming service. I was like, this is fantastic for the low cost of nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just realized that Broadchurch is on Tubi as well. I've been wanting to rewatch that.
I haven't watched that. You watched that too, didn't you, Tim?
Yeah, it's a huge one. Yeah, it's a good one. There's two versions. There's an American one and a British one.
Yeah. Yeah, Broadchurch is
the British one did 3 seasons, right?
Yes, it did. And then the American one was Grace Point, I think.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
The one series that I want to rewatch, because I never watched the end of it, was Luther. Tim, I know you're a big fan of that one as well. But it's available here on CBC Gem.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to. My main television does not have Gem on it, only my other television. So I'm like frustrated because I'm like, I want to watch it, but I can't. I have to like make time because my son tends to use the downstairs with the other TV more of the time. So I'm like, I want to watch this, but I also have to find time in the busy schedule of my house.
Kids.
Yeah. I tried selling them to the circus. Apparently they're not buying right now.
No, they frown on that, do they?
Yeah. I told them, like, they're great. They'll clean up elephant poop, whatever you need, but no, not happening.
Yeah, they rearrange your television with their stereo and stuff going. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No sports ball this week?
Oh, what's happening in sports ball? Yeah, not really. It's just sort of the middle of a football season, the like 2 months in on hockey, 2 months in on basketball. It's kind of right now.
I thought football's over after the CFL Grey Cup.
Is it?
Yeah.
Bonus points, Josh, if you can tell me who won the Canadian Football Championship last weekend.
Oh, that's easy. That was the hey Google, who won the championship last week? Yeah, no, I don't sports ball, so
yeah. Well, when it comes to Canadian football, I'm not sure you're missing out. So, in fairness, it's the third best football product in the world. It is also the third best in North America, behind the NFL and college football. So, yeah, it's something. The good news is there's only 9 teams, so you have a 1 in 9 chance, if you're a fan of a team, of your team winning a championship every year, which is nice.
Yeah, that's true. I'm originally from Chicago, and so, well, the Bears had like 1 chance. Oh, how many years ago was that now? But
yeah,
that's not going to happen again.
I grew up in this area, in the Toronto area, and was a Detroit Lions fan because they were always on TV when I was younger, because they're local. And I ended up becoming a Barry Sanders fan, who was one of the best running backs to ever play the game. And so I watched that and really got invested in the Detroit Lions, not realizing when I got interested in them that they are terrible, beyond words terrible. So I have been watching off and on. I come and go with football a little bit, but I have been watching the Detroit Lions suffer and be terrible, literally going through entire seasons where they do not win a game for my whole life. And this season, for the first time last week, they are now the odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl, and I almost fell out of my chair when I heard that. I was like, I don't even know what to do with that. I can't even imagine. I guess maybe it's being heartbroken as a Toronto sports fan all these years too. I mean, luckily we've won, in my lifetime, a couple of World Series with the Blue Jays. We've won an NBA championship. Our hockey team plays also. But I find that it's weird to find yourself in the position of favorite. It's so unfamiliar. Even when the Raptors won, they weren't the favorites to win. They just happened to win. I don't know how to process the idea of a team that has been so legendarily terrible now being predicted to be, people are like, oh, they're going to win it all. I'm like, I don't know what
this
to
year?
do with that. Yeah. People think that the Detroit Lions are going to win.
I thought we were talking about our team. Okay.
No, the Maple Leafs, come on. No, we should know better, Tim. Never get your hopes up. Never get your hopes up. It's the hope that kills you. Yeah. So, yeah, I must admit, Josh, I wish I had your perspective on this, because sometimes I question myself, thinking, why do even sports ball? It's just asking for pain and suffering.
See, it's not even that for me. I've got 2 kids and a job, and just trying to, like, what do I want to stay up on? Do I want to stay up on top of entertaining fictional shows, or do I want to stay on top of sports ball? Like, it's just, I don't have the time to do all of it. And so to me, sports is least interesting. It doesn't matter. Is there character development going on? Like, is next season going to build off of what happened on the court this season? Is there going to be some intrigue? Like, that's not happening. So that's not interesting to me. And even when with Rebels and Clone Wars, I legit want to sit and binge them and watch them. And it's just hard finding the time. So I just fall back to, I can have Babylon 5 on while I'm working, because I've seen it a few times. I know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
It's the same way how I can do Stargate. And again, the same reason why I can't just jump into the middle of Clone Wars or something. Like, I'm going to start at I'm going to start at Clone Wars, then go into Rebels.
Yeah.
It's the same reason why whenever I watch Stargate, I start with Children of the Gods, season 1, episode 1, and I don't stop until I've gone through unending season 10, episode, 20? Like, I can't jump in the middle. I'm not just going to go, window of opportunity sounds fun. Well, I take that back. I'll do that on Groundhog Day. That's become a family thing now. We'll watch Groundhog Day, and then we'll watch Window of Opportunity. But other than that, I can't just do that with a TV show. I have to go sequentially. So I've managed that. I've managed that a little bit over the past few years, where I can cherry pick a little bit. Like, I can't just start at season 3 and then watch to the end, but I've been able to sit down with a few shows that I like and just cherry pick. Oh, that episode's really good. I'm just going to watch that episode. And again, it's more what you're talking about. It's more just sort of like, I want something on. I'm going to kind of be doing something on my phone or my laptop or whatever. I want something that's comforting, that I know the beats of. I don't really have to look up, but I can look up whenever I know something good's about to happen. Exactly.
And I definitely find myself going to, like, I don't want to start at season 1, episode 1 for some of those things. I kind of want to just cherry pick. Oh, I know this is a great one. I'll put on a banger of an episode of insert series here. Yeah.
I think that's my problem with Babylon 5. Not that it's a problem, but because of how it builds off of everything.
Right.
I want to, in my mind, have the universe rebuilt again. I want to see the conflict between the Narns and the Centauri. What's going on there again? Nope, not going to spoil beyond that. But, like, what's going on there? So, yeah, that's why I'm in the middle of season 3 again. Because I went through 1 and 2 already.
Does it? Yeah, so I know that after the series, they did a bunch of movies as well, right?
So there was the pilot movie, which is set before the first season. Then there were 2 movies. One of them, I think, is after season 3. One of them's after season 4. I have to look that up. I get that confused all the time.
Are they kind of must in order kind of stuff? Like, would you recommend starting with the sort of pilot movie and then going into the first episode, or is it something you watch sort of out of order? Or
so I think they're optional for the whole show, but there are some threads that start in season 2 that come from the pilot movie. So at the very least, you could watch the pilot movie. It's going to be rough. That's okay.
I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. The acting and the makeup is going to look not as polished as you might expect. It's okay. It'll get better. I'm going to just say that the character of Delenn definitely looks better in the series than in the pilot movie.
Okay.
So you could do that to try to set up the universe and kind of the concept of the station and the main ambassadors and the races, if you want to, but otherwise, yeah.
Do the other, like, is the end of the series the end of the series, or is there like a movie as a coda or anything?
The end of the series is the end of the series.
Okay.
Interesting about the end of the series, it was written as a 5-year plan, and it looked good, but towards the end of season 4, they weren't sure if they were going to get that 5th season. So they filmed the finale and then got the green light for a 5th season. So technically, the finale was filmed before they shot season 5.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it doesn't change anything, but it's just an interesting little tidbit. There is a animated short film, I guess it's about 30 minutes long, I believe, called Babylon 5: The Road Home. That how do I put this? So you have the show, you have the finale, and the finale really is a finale, but there is room in the story for things that can happen before the last episode and the rest of the show. And so that's where you get something like that animated film to come in, where it can kind of add a story in there. And also being animated is probably ideal because we've lost over half of the main cast of Babylon 5. So it's easier to just have voice replacements than actor replacements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still, it's hard too. It's so many of these great series. There's so many great series over the years. And again, we have gone through, a real sci-fi, luxurious period of sci-fi, all the sort of the nerds have taken over. And there's so many great series out there where you find yourself thinking like, yeah, I've always wanted to watch that. But it's just like, it becomes so daunting too, where you're like, I really want to watch that. Oh yeah, I have to make time for an X number of years. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying about like, I haven't had time to watch Dune. I haven't time, There's so much content now.
Yeah, which is why it's so easy to just fall back to, I've seen this, I know I like it, and I think it's because I like the universe that I'm okay getting dragged back into it. Sure, I don't like what ends up happening to some people and some species, but like overall, it just feels comfortable. Maybe just because it was so well built to where it feels like a cushy universe that you want to dig into again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, you have to give it a few episodes. Yeah. I guess that's all I can say. It's true with any show.
Yeah. I'll have to add that to the list. I've been contemplating a rewatch of Enterprise because I'm still not convinced I have watched every episode. When they started doing the sequential episodes in season 3, I'm still not convinced I watched that entire storyline.
Yeah.
It was a busy stretch of my life. So I feel like at some point I got to sit down and just get, watch that beat by beat and see how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I have
been a few years, but I did the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the nice thing with Enterprise is, at least from my experience, is it gets better when you go back. Like, I remember watching it when it first came on the air, and I don't know if it was just me being young. I did not appreciate DS9 at that point, so maybe I was still too caught up in TNG is the only Star Trek, blah. So
if there's no Enterprise, it's not for me.
Yeah. No Kirk, no Trek. So maybe that was why I didn't like Enterprise so much the first run through. But going back through it, I think I've gone through it 2 more times since it originally aired. It's better. It's better than I remember. Yeah.
It's just never ending though. I mean, we talk about it on this pod all the time where it's like, oh, this new series is coming out. Like, we sat down in August and we're just like mapping out what the fall would look like. And we're like, oh yeah, that series is coming. Oh yeah, that series is coming. Oh yeah, that series is coming. And like, oh yeah, Dune's coming. Oh yeah. And oh yeah, I've got this. Yeah, there's a new Star Wars series coming. Oh yeah. And they're kicking off the new DC universe and like all this stuff. It's just like, oh my God. Yep. Like when, they were like, oh, it's going to be a down year because of the writers and actors strikes last year. It's going to be a down year. They're not going to be able to do as much stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'm fine with that. How about you guys don't make anything for like 2-3 years and I'll catch up.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And you said DC. I totally forget DC's a thing. I have not even bothered because I know that's a whole nother universe that would take time. So I have mentally just like cut it off. I don't care.
Yeah, and again, they're going to kick off a whole new, so everything that you've invested in so far, that's out the window. Start over. Like, okay, cool. Yep. It's funny, though, because, I remember when they did that a few times. They've done it tons of times over the history of Marvel and DC Comics, where they're like, we're going to reboot things. We're going to start from issue 1 again. We're going to start at the beginning. I'm like, great. I see an exit ramp. Thank you for that. Like, I appreciate it when you give me a chance to be like, oh, you're ending the series. You're changing the characters. Great. I don't have to follow along. So, they got to be careful with some of this stuff or it will bite them in the butt, too. Like, there's only a certain amount of patience, especially in a world that's just pounded with content now. All the streaming services that want your money in your eyes, all of the networks still exist, cable stations still exist, movies still exist. Like, everybody wants your dough and your eyes, and like if somebody does a too good a job of ending one thing and moving on to the next, I don't have to go with you. Not to mention in a world of podcasts like this one that everyone should be making time for, but in a world of podcasts and audiobooks and Spotify and all these different things, like there's a lot of demand on your time. You really kind of have to decide what your priorities are, right? As you say, like, how can you and there's a live sporting event, I don't want to watch that because that's going to take time away from this other stuff, and and by the way, my kids want to pay attention to me, so like that's the thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I've cut down to the Super Bowl is the only event that gets the only sport event that gets any live attention. It's not even the full game. It'll be just until my son gets bored, and then we'll go do something else. But I treat it as an opportunity to cook something different that night.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, everyone's having Super Bowl parties. Yeah, sure, we'll do tacos tonight. Yeah. I'm kidding. I do tacos more often than that. I love my family.
How old are your kids?
7 and 9.
7 and 9. Great ages. Enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my kids are young adults, and it's it's a whole different world.
I believe it.
Mm-hmm. Mine are old adults.
That's true. Yours are old adults. Thanks for that. Yeah.
So what does that make you, Tim?
It makes me really old, yeah.
If we're old adults, and I can say this: I'm not someone's grandfather.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I've been somebody's grandfather for 21 years now, though.
It's true. It's true. My boy. Yeah. Well, should we stick a fork in this one?
Yeah. Until next time, we'll see you in the future. Did I say see you in the future this time? I didn't.
You did. Yeah.
Okay. Never know. It's like patter. Thanks, Josh. Thanks for coming out and filling it like you did say. If we ever needed a host, you're our man. There you are.
Happy to drop by.
Yeah, it was great to have you.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
All right. Take care, guys.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today's actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico. How do you feel when you switch to Geico and save on your car insurance? It's like going to work on one Thursday morning and thinking to yourself, just one more day until Friday. But then somebody in the elevator says, Happy Friday! Then you check your phone quickly and discover today's actually Friday. So yes, Happy Friday, random stranger in the elevator. Happy Friday indeed. Yep, switching and saving with Geico feels just like that. Get more with Geico.